Canine German Shepherd puppy fell in love with a bobcat. Now the Bobcat has no idea how to escape. When Officer Daniel rescued a tiny German Shepherd puppy from an abandoned construction site, he never imagined the chaos that would follow. The puppy, full of energy and curiosity, had one mission from the start: to make friends with anything that moved. But when he set his sights on Pumbaa, a young wild bobcat rescued just weeks earlier and still adjusting to life in captivity, everything changed. What started as innocent tail wags and playful barks turned into an unstoppable obsession. The little canine wouldn't leave Pumbaa alone, following him around the enclosure, trying to cuddle, jumping on him at every chance, and offering sloppy puppy kisses that left the bobcat stunned, confused, and honestly, a little terrified. But beneath the growls and annoyed hisses, something incredible was about to happen. A friendship no one thought possible, a bond that would defy nature, and a story that will make you laugh, cry, and believe in the power of unlikely connections. Before we dive into this unforgettable journey between predator and pup, make sure to subscribe to the channel, like this video, and turn on notifications. This helps us bring you more heartwarming and inspiring stories like this one. Officer Daniel Harper had seen a lot in his 10 years working with the K9 unit, but nothing could have prepared him for the scene unfolding in front of him. It all started one cold morning at the edge of Cedar Creek, a small town known more for its quiet streets than for wildlife drama. Daniel had received a call about a German Shepherd puppy found trapped inside an old half-demolished warehouse on the outskirts of town. When he arrived at the scene, the little pup was shivering, covered in dust and dirt, his large ears too big for his small head, and his paws comically oversized for his skinny body. Daniel scooped him up and held him close. "You're gonna be a big bee one day," he whispered with a smile, already picturing the pup in a K9 vest. But the real surprise came when Daniel decided to bring the puppy, who he quickly named Chase, to the Animal Rescue Center for a health checkup. The Cedar Creek Wildlife Rescue had recently taken in a young bobcat. The staff affectionately named him Pumbaa because of his stocky build and wide, expressive eyes. Pumbaa had been found abandoned in the nearby woods, weak and underweight. Since then, the rescue staff had been working hard to nurse him back to health. Chase had barely been at the center for 10 minutes when it happened. Daniel stood by the front desk, filling out paperwork, when Chase wriggled free from his carrier. The little shepherd's nose went straight to work, sniffing the air with determination. His ears perked, tail wagging like a propeller. Then, without warning, he bolted down the hallway toward the animal enclosures. "Chase, no!" Daniel called out, chasing after him. But Chase was fast, shockingly fast for such a small pup. The moment the puppy reached Pumbaa's enclosure, chaos erupted. Pumbaa had been lounging lazily on a wooden platform, soaking in a patch of morning sun, enjoying the peace he was slowly learning to trust again. When Chase appeared at the gate, ears perked, tongue out, eyes full of joy, it took Pumbaa a few seconds to register what was happening. Then, total panic. The bobcat jumped to his feet, fur puffing out in every direction. He hissed loudly, crouching low with wide eyes as if a tiger had invaded his territory. Chase, however, took the hissing as an invitation to play. The little German Shepherd barked excitedly, leaping against the enclosure fence, wagging his tail even harder. He started doing playful spins, making little growl-like noises that sounded more like giggles than threats. "Great, just great," Daniel muttered as he reached the scene, nearly slipping on the smooth floor. Staff members rushed over, trying to calm both animals. But Chase wasn't done. With surprising determination, the puppy managed to squeeze through a small maintenance gap at the bottom corner of the enclosure gate. An opening no one thought was big enough for him. Gasps filled the air as Chase tumbled into the enclosure, landing clumsily on his paws just a few feet from the stunned bobcat. For a moment, time seemed to freeze. Daniel's heart stopped. The staff stood frozen in shock. Chase, however, simply trotted over, sat down in front of Pumbaa, and tilted his head in that classic puppy way that said, "Hi, wanna be best friends forever?" Pumbaa stared at him, utterly horrified. With one swift motion, the bobcat leapt onto a high perch, far out of reach, staring down at the pup like he had just seen a ghost. Chase let out a tiny, heart-melting whimper, staring up with wide, hopeful eyes. Daniel sighed, rubbing his forehead. Unbelievable. This dog just fell head over heels for a bobcat. The rescue staff started laughing nervously, realizing that no one had ever seen anything quite like this. As Daniel scooped Chase back into his arms, the puppy licked his face excitedly, already glancing back toward the enclosure like he couldn't wait to see his new friend again. Little did they all know, this was just the beginning of a story that would soon melt hearts across the entire town, and maybe even the country. What none of them realized was how determined Chase was, and how completely unprepared Pumbaa was for what would happen next. For the next few days, the Cedar Creek Wildlife Rescue Center became the stage for what the staff jokingly called Operation Bobcat Breakout. Pumbaa, once known for being calm and reserved, had turned into a full-time escape artist. Every time Chase arrived with Officer Daniel for his routine checkups and training exercises, the puppy's one and only mission was clear: find Pumbaa and shower him with affection. The first morning after their chaotic introduction, Daniel kept Chase on a leash. He figured that would solve the problem. Wrong. The second Chase caught Pumbaa's scent, the leash became a useless piece of fabric. The puppy pulled, jumped, and whined, with a determination that could rival any fully trained police dog chasing down a suspect. Daniel tightened his grip and tried to redirect the pup's attention with treats and toys. But nothing worked. Chase would cry and stare at Pumbaa's enclosure for hours if given the chance. Inside the enclosure, Pumbaa's life had become complicated. Every time he tried to nap, he'd wake up to the sound of tiny paws scratching at the wire mesh. Every time he tried to eat, a pair of puppy eyes would be peering at him through the fence. The final straw came 3 days later, when Chase found a new trick: digging. That morning, Daniel had been chatting with the staff at the front desk when a loud commotion erupted from the back of the center. "Daniel, he's loose again," one of the volunteers yelled. Daniel sprinted toward the outdoor enclosures. Sure enough, Chase had dug a small hole beneath the perimeter fence of Pumbaa's enclosure. Half of his little body was already through, his tail wagging furiously as he wiggled to squeeze the rest of the way in. Pumbaa, meanwhile, was perched high on a wooden beam, staring down with sheer disbelief. His ears flattened, his tail fluffed up twice its normal size, and his golden eyes narrowed in panic. Daniel reached the fence just as Chase managed to push through the last inch of dirt and tumble inside. "Chase, no!" The puppy scrambled to his feet, shaking off the dirt, and immediately trotted toward Pumbaa, barking, whining, and wagging like he'd just found his long-lost best friend. Pumbaa Tumbo leaped from his beam to another higher platform, making distance between himself and the overly affectionate German Shepherd. What made it even more hilarious, at least to the rescue staff, was that every time Pumbaa moved, Chase would sit beneath the platform, staring up with complete adoration, tail sweeping the ground like a metronome set on happy mode. "He's like a lovesick teenager," one of the volunteers joked. "More like a stalker," another replied, laughing. Daniel wasn't laughing, though. That night, back at home, he sat on his couch with Chase curled up next to him. The puppy had finally exhausted himself after hours of chasing Pumbaa around the enclosure. Daniel rubbed Chase's head and sighed. "Buddy, I don't know what it is about that bobcat, but you're completely obsessed." Chase let out a soft, sleepy bark, then nuzzled deeper into Daniel's side. The next morning, Daniel arrived at the center extra early with a plan: stronger barriers, extra leash training, and more distractions for Chase. But Pumbaa had a plan too. As soon as Chase arrived and started his usual barking and whining near the enclosure, Pumbaa did something no one expected. He disappeared. Somehow, during the night, the clever Bobcat had figured out how to unhook a section of the fencing near the back of his enclosure. By the time Daniel and the staff noticed, Pumbaa was already gone, slipped out into the nearby woods. Panic erupted instantly. "He's never tried to escape before," one staff member shouted, grabbing flashlights. "Chase, stay!" Daniel ordered, securing the pup inside the main building before joining the search party. But even locked inside, Chase could sense what had happened. He barked and whined, scratching at the door, desperate to follow. Out in the woods, Pumbaa was moving fast. Branches whipped past him as he ran. His heart pounded in his chest, fueled by instinct. Escape, distance, freedom. Or at least, that's what Pumbaa thought he wanted. Little did he know, his biggest problem wasn't the forest. It was that Chase was about to come looking for him. And when a determined German Shepherd puppy sets his mind on something, nothing in the world, not fences, not trees, not even an entire forest, could stop him. Chase had never experienced this kind of heartbreak before. From the moment he was born, people and animals had always been nearby, offering attention, food, and warm places to sleep. But now, as he sat behind the glass door of the rescue center, staring at the empty Bobcat enclosure, a heavy sadness settled in his little puppy heart. Pumbaa was gone. Chase paced back and forth, letting out frustrated yelps. Every so often, he'd sit by the door, scratch at the floor, and then let out the most pitiful whine Daniel had ever heard. Daniel stood nearby, watching with crossed arms and a growing headache. Volunteers rushed in and out of the building, armed with radios and maps, as the search for Pumbaa stretched into its second hour. "Do you think he's far?" Daniel asked one of the staff. "We're not sure," said Mia, the center's head wildlife specialist. "Bobcats are fast, but Pumbaa's still recovering from malnutrition. He probably hasn't gone too far yet, but the longer he stays out there, the more dangerous it gets. Coyotes, cars, people with traps." Daniel's stomach turned at the thought. Just then, a loud bark snapped him out of it. Chase stood at the door, tail stiff, ears alert. He let out another bark, this time sharp, determined. His nose was pressed hard against the glass, and his whole body leaned toward the forest beyond the parking lot. Daniel knelt down beside him. "What is it, boy?" Chase let out a low whimper, then barked again. Mia walked over, noticing the pup's reaction. "He's picking up Pumbaa's scent." Daniel's eyes widened. "You think he can track him?" "Well, he's young, but instinct is instinct," Mia said with a shrug. "German Shepherds have noses built for this, and judging by how obsessed he's been with Pumbaa, I wouldn't be surprised." Daniel didn't hesitate. "Open the door." Mia blinked. "Are you serious?" "He's faster than we are, and if anyone can find that Bobcat, it's Chase." Without wasting another second, Daniel clipped a long tracking leash to Chase's collar and cracked the door open. The puppy bolted. For a little dog still growing into his own legs, Chase moved with surprising speed and focus. His nose stayed close to the ground as he followed the scent trail through the parking lot, across the grassy field behind the center, and straight toward the edge of the woods. Daniel ran after him, the leash stretched taut between them. Mia and 2 other volunteers followed close behind, armed with flashlights and portable radios. Chase led them through thick underbrush, over fallen logs, and down narrow animal paths. Even as small branches scratched at Daniel's arms and face, he kept running, determined not to lose sight of the puppy. Chase suddenly stopped near a cluster of rocks at the base of a large oak tree. His tail yanked furiously, and he started barking like crazy. Daniel pushed through the last set of bushes and froze. There, crouched behind the rocks with wide, terrified eyes, was Pumbaa. The bobcat's fur was a mess of dirt and leaves, and his sides heaved with every breath, but he was alive. Pumbaa hissed low in his throat, clearly still panicked. Chase, however, took the moment to wag even harder and let out a happy yelp. Without hesitation, the puppy lunged forward, only to be held back just in time by Daniel's firm grip on the leash. "Easy, buddy," Daniel murmured, kneeling beside him. "Let's not give the poor cat another heart attack." Mia and the volunteers approached carefully with a transport crate and gloves. "It's okay, Pumbaa," Mia said softly, crouching down. "We're here to take you home." Surprisingly, the bobcat didn't bolt. Exhausted and out of energy, Pumbaa allowed the team to gently scoop him into the crate. The entire hike back to the center, Chase trotted proudly beside Daniel, tail high, like he'd just completed the most important mission of his life. And in a way, he had. But as they reached the rescue center, Daniel couldn't shake the feeling that this little adventure was just the beginning of something much bigger. Chase had proven he would do anything for Pumbaa. And whether the bobcat liked it or not, this puppy wasn't going to give up on him anytime soon. Back at the rescue center, the mood was a strange mix of relief and exhaustion. Volunteers high-fived each other as Pumbaa was carefully placed back inside his enclosure. Mia gave Daniel a tired but grateful smile before heading off to check the bobcat's vitals. Chase, however, had no interest in resting. The second Pumbaa was inside. The little German shepherd planted himself right outside the enclosure, his tail wagging wildly. Ears perked and tongue lolling out in pure joy. Inside, Pumbaa paced anxiously along the far side of the enclosure. His muscles remained tense, his golden eyes darting toward every tiny movement. Chase let out a playful bark. Pumbaa froze, turned slowly, and stared at the puppy. Daniel stood nearby, watching with folded arms. "You're gonna scare him again, buddy," he said quietly, giving Chase a gentle pat on the head. But the puppy didn't care. His focus stayed locked on the bobcat. Over the next couple of hours, something unexpected started to happen. Pumbaa, though still jumpy, stopped hiding on the highest perches. He began sitting halfway down the platform, watching Chase with guarded curiosity. Whenever Chase barked, instead of bolting or hissing, Pumbaa would tilt his head and study the little dog like he was trying to figure him out. Mia noticed, too. "I don't want to jinx it, but I think Pumbaa's curiosity is starting to beat his fear." Daniel raised an eyebrow. "That would be a miracle." By late afternoon, Daniel decided it was time to test the waters. He grabbed Chase's leash and slowly walked him toward the edge of the enclosure, keeping a respectful distance. "Okay, little man," Daniel whispered. "Let's show him you can be calm." Chase sat obediently, though his tail betrayed him, thumping against the ground with unstoppable excitement. Inside the enclosure, Pumbaa crept closer to the fence. One slow step at a time, his eyes remained fixed on the puppy's every move. The two locked eyes. For the first time, no growls, no hisses. Pumbaa let out a small, questioning chirp, a soft, almost confused sound that no one expected. Daniel's mouth fell open slightly. Was that friendly? Mia laughed softly from across the yard. For a bobcat, that's basically an invitation to dinner. Chase tilted his head at the sound, then gave a tiny, soft bark in return, much quieter than his usual enthusiastic explosions. For the next few minutes, the two animals sat like that, simply staring at each other through the fence. Daniel watched carefully, feeling something shift in the air. It wasn't friendship, not yet, but it wasn't fear anymore either. Later that evening, Daniel carried Chase back to his SUV. As he opened the passenger door, he paused and looked back toward the enclosure. Pumbaa sat on his wooden platform, staring at the retreating figure of the puppy. Chase whined softly, as if reluctant to leave. "I know, buddy," Daniel said, scratching behind the pup's ears. "We'll come back tomorrow." Back at home, Daniel placed Chase's favorite blanket near the window. The puppy curled up instantly, letting out a contented sigh. But even as he drifted to sleep, Chase kept his nose pointed toward the door, like he was already dreaming of the next time he'd see his bobcat friend. What Daniel didn't realize was that tomorrow, everything between Chase and Pumbaa would change again. A new challenge was coming, one that would test both animals in ways no one could predict. Because sometimes, the path to trust isn't just about time, it's about facing danger together. And that danger was already on its way. The next morning, Cedar Creek was hit with an unexpected storm. Heavy rain pounded the streets, and thick clouds turned the small town into a gray, moody blur. Daniel woke early, sipping coffee by the window as he watched the downpour. Even with the bad weather, he knew Chase wouldn't let him skip their daily visit to the rescue center. Sure enough, the moment Daniel grabbed his jacket, Chase was at the door, spinning in excited circles. All right, let's go," Daniel chuckled, clipping on the leash. By the time they arrived at the center, the parking lot was nearly empty. Most of the staff had called in, stuck at home because of flooded roads. Mia was one of the few who made it in, her raincoat dripping as she greeted Daniel at the entrance. "Storm's knocking out the power lines," she said. "Half the security systems are down. We're trying to keep everyone safe and calm." Daniel nodded, glancing toward Pumbaa's enclosure. The bobcat sat curled under a covered section, his golden eyes alert as always. Even with the rain pouring down, Chase's excitement didn't fade. The puppy pulled on the leash, eager to get closer. "I'll let him sit by the fence for a few minutes," Daniel said. "Maybe it'll help both of them stay calm during this mess." Mia gave a tired smile. "Just keep him dry." As Daniel walked Chase toward the enclosure, lightning cracked across the sky, followed by a loud boom of thunder. The sound shook the ground and startled everyone. Suddenly, chaos erupted. From behind the building, a large tree, its roots loosened by days of rain, toppled over with a deafening crash. The ground vibrated as it smashed through part of the rescue center's perimeter fence. "Everyone inside, now!" Mia yelled from the front entrance. But Daniel's heart stopped when he realized something. The fallen tree had crushed the side of Pumbaa's enclosure, and the bobcat was gone. "No! No, no, no!" Daniel shouted, yanking Chase back from the open area. But Chase wasn't interested in retreating. The moment the puppy realized Pumbaa was missing, he let out a sharp bark and lunged forward with all his strength. Daniel struggled to hold the leash, slipping on the wet grass, and as Chase dragged him toward the broken section of the fence. Through the heavy rain, Daniel caught a glimpse of Pumbaa sprinting toward the nearby woods, panic driving every step. "Stay!" Daniel commanded. But Chase wasn't listening. The puppy broke free from the leash clip with a sudden burst of strength Daniel didn't know he had. "Chase, stop!" But it was too late. The little German shepherd raced through the gap, splashing through puddles, nose low to the ground, already tracking Pumbaa's scent. Daniel cursed under his breath and grabbed a flashlight from Mia, who was coordinating other volunteers to secure the rest of the animals. "I'm going after him," Daniel shouted over the roar of the rain. Mia's eyes widened. "Be careful. The woods are a mess right now. Watch for mudslides." Daniel took off, his heart pounding harder with every step. Deeper into the forest, Chase was relentless. His tiny legs moved fast, slipping and sliding over wet leaves and mud. But no matter how many times he stumbled, he kept going. Ahead of him, Pumbaa darted through the trees, heart racing, unsure whether he was running from the storm or from the stubborn little dog behind him. Branches scratched at Chase's face, His fur was soaked, his body cold, but none of it mattered. The only thing in his mind was getting to Pumbaa. Suddenly, the bobcat's paws slid over a patch of unstable ground near the edge of a small ravine. The earth shifted. With a terrifying crack, the muddy slope gave way. Pumbaa disappeared over the edge with a startled yowl. Chase skidded to a stop just inches from the drop, barking desperately. When Daniel finally caught up minutes later, flashlight beam cutting through the rain, he froze at the edge of the ravine. Down below, half buried in wet earth, Pumbaa lay trapped under a fallen branch. Alive but unable to move, and standing right at the edge, barking, whining, refusing to leave, was Chase. Daniel's heart pounded as adrenaline surged through him. This wasn't just about a puppy chasing a friend anymore. This was now a rescue mission. And Daniel knew they were running out of time. Daniel dropped to his knees at the edge of the ravine, the beam of his flashlight shaking in his hand as he tried to assess the situation below. The rain was falling harder now, making the muddy ground even more unstable. "Pumbaa," Daniel breathed, heart pounding. The young bobcat lay partially pinned under a fallen branch, his chest heaving with each strained breath. One of his back legs was twisted awkwardly beneath the debris. His golden eyes blinked slowly, filled with fear and exhaustion. Chase stood just inches from the drop, barking and whining, his little paws muddy and trembling. Every time Daniel called his name, the puppy turned and looked at him, but then went right back to barking toward Pumbaa, as if begging someone, anyone, to help. Daniel knew he had seconds to make a decision. If he waited too long, the shifting mud could take both animals deeper into the ravine, or worse. Without another thought, Daniel pulled the rope from his emergency pack, tying one end around a thick tree trunk nearby. He clipped the other end to his belt, tested its strength, and started sliding carefully down the slope. "Stay, Chase!" he shouted, glancing back, but the puppy refused to sit still. Whining loudly, Chase began pacing in frantic circles at the top of the ravine, his tail low and ears pinned back with stress. Daniel reached Pumbaa within moments. The bobcat flinched as he approached, but Daniel kept his voice low and soothing. "It's okay, buddy. I'm here. I'm not gonna let you die out here." Using both hands, Daniel lifted the heavy branch just enough to pull Pumbaa's back leg free. The bobcat let out a weak, pained growl, but didn't fight him. Once Pumbaa was clear, Daniel secured him gently inside a rescue sling. Just as he started climbing back up, the ground beneath him began to give way. A section of the ravine wall collapsed, sending mud and rocks tumbling. Daniel's foot slipped. He lost his grip on the rope and slid a few feet back down, landing hard on his side. Pain shot through his shoulder. At the top of the ravine, Chase's frantic barking grew louder and more desperate. "Hang on!" Daniel shouted through gritted teeth, trying to regain his footing while holding on to Pumbaa. Suddenly, above him, something unexpected happened. Chase jumped. The tiny German shepherd, with more heart than sense, lunged down the slope, scrambling and sliding toward Daniel and Pumbaa. "Chase! No, stay back!" Daniel yelled. But the pup kept coming, mud splattering from his paws as he maneuvered his way down with clumsy determination. Chase reached Daniel within seconds and immediately began licking his face, whimpering with worry. Okay, I'm fine," Daniel muttered, grabbing hold of the rope again. "But you're crazy. You know that?" With renewed determination, Daniel wrapped the rope around both himself and the rescue sling holding a Pumbaa. With one arm, he clutched the exhausted bobcat to his chest. With the other, he grabbed Chase's collar, keeping the wriggling puppy close as he started the slow, agonizing climb back up the slope. The rain blurred his vision. His shoulder burned. But with every pull, every groan of exertion, Daniel focused on one thing: getting both animals to safety. After what felt like an eternity, his hand finally gripped the top edge of the ravine. Mia and 2 other volunteers appeared, rushing over with outstretched hands, helping drag Daniel, Pumbaa, and Chase onto solid ground. The moment they were safe, Daniel collapsed onto his back, breathing hard, completely drenched and covered in mud. Chase, unfazed by the mud and chaos, immediately climbed onto Daniel's chest, licking his face in celebration. "Yeah, you helped." Daniel laughed weakly, wrapping an arm around the puppy. Mia knelt beside them, checking Pumbaa quickly. "His leg's injured, but he's breathing. He's a fighter." Daniel closed his eyes for a second, relief washing over him. As the rain finally began to ease, Daniel opened his eyes and looked at Chase, this muddy, stubborn, fearless little German shepherd who had refused to give up on his unlikely friend. "You're something else, kid," Daniel whispered. And though Pumbaa was still too weak to react, Daniel noticed one small, remarkable thing. The bobcat, for the first time ever, didn't flinch when Chase curled up right beside him. Together, soaked and bruised, the 3 of them lay side by side on the wet ground, survivors of a night none of them would ever forget. What none of them knew was that this rescue was just the beginning of an even stronger bond waiting to grow between them. 1 week later, the sun finally broke through the gray clouds over Cedar Creek. Inside the rescue center, Pumbaa rested comfortably on a pile of fresh blankets. His injured leg was healing, and for the first time, he seemed truly at peace. Chase sat just outside the enclosure, tail wagging slowly, his eyes never leaving the bobcat. Mia and Daniel stood nearby, watching the 2. "You really think they'll ever get along?" Mia asked with a smile. Daniel chuckled softly. "I think they already do, in their own weird way." As if on cue, Pumbaa let out a soft chirp from his perch, glancing at Chase without a hint of fear. Chase's ears perked up, and he let out a quiet, happy bark. Daniel knelt down beside the puppy. "Looks like you finally won him over, buddy." Chase licked Daniel's hand, then returned to his post, keeping loyal watch over the friend he nearly risked everything to save. From that day on, the rescue center had a new story to tell. A story about a stubborn little German shepherd, a wild, grumpy bobcat, and a friendship no one believed was possible. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, leave a like, and share it with someone who loves stories of loyalty and courage. Together, let's spread more moments like this one.